Hey, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, or for our podcast listeners at home, you are listening to, what are we saying here? I guess for my YouTube audience, you're watching Artemis Dice Company. For my podcast listeners, I think we've officially decided we're going to call this Rollin' with Friends, a dice making roundtable.
I like it. I like it.
It needed a little bit of help to get there, but we did it eventually. I'm so excited to be back again. This is officially the first episode that we are recording that is intentionally going to be made into a podcast. When we did the very first one, it was just supposed to be a YouTube video, and by the end of it, I was like, this is a podcast. What am I even doing? Our guest today is probably, and I say probably, but I'm actually fairly certain, our guest today was my first ever TikTok friend. Kat from Cultured Swine Dice is here with us today.
Hey, hey. So glad to be here. I think you're one of my first dice making friends as well. Either you or Whitney. I can't remember how it all lined up.
See, I know for sure that I was friends with you first because it was in one of your lives that I quote unquote met Whitney. And then during your entire life, all she and I did was talk about mica powders she liked. And then I went and bought all of them.
That checks out.
Yeah, that was my first interaction with Whitney. Whitney, by the way, for those of you who do not know, is Smoking Glue Guns. Whitney will be on the podcast eventually. We don't know when yet. She's currently in New Orleans, and she told me she'd send me her schedule when she gets home. She works more than anybody I know, I think, in the entire world.
You know, I thought about it a little more about who might have been one of my first dice connections. And I think it was all of us cats got together because there's a surprisingly high quantity of cat dice makers. There's myself, there's Dice Cat, Smash Raptor Customs. She made my original master. She's also a cat. And then Black Cat Goblin Dice is also a cat. So that's at least 4 of us. So I think it was Smash Raptor or Dice Cat for some of my first cat or dice friends.
I don't know why I feel like now we need to have I don't know, like a cat cafe episode.
Yes.
Just get all the cats.
That's all
And
D&D themed.
So I remember coming across your TikTok. I cannot tell you what the first one I ever saw was.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't think it was one of the super viral ones, although you had maybe some Pokemon stuff do super well before I kind of crossed your path. I don't think it was one of those videos, but I do remember instantly thinking it was so cool that you just immediately dove right onto TikTok before you'd even poured a set of dice.
Yeah.
I started dice making in January, and I made my first dice making TikTok in April, which, is not huge. I guess I waited until I felt like I knew what the heck I was doing.
Yeah.
And it just felt like you were well,
I won
sink
it.
or swim.
I had no idea. I literally no idea what I was doing. It was great. The day I posted my first TikTok was the day I did my first dice pour. There was no time in between. It was literally if you time stamped that video, that next day was the day that I was demolding. And I feel like I've always kind of gone through that pattern where I don't leave a lot of time in between what I'm filming and what I'm doing. And yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. I knew Ribinator from YouTube. I'm a child of Ribinator. And I had no idea there was a dice making community on TikTok or really any social media platforms. I had seen his stuff. I think I had maybe looked some stuff up on TikTok and couldn't find much. And I think maybe at that time there wasn't a big community developed yet. People hadn't really made their way yet to the app. So I saw that there was a space for it. And I thought, hey, people like following a journey. I want to document it so I can see, hey, this is what I was doing when I first started. And then I kind of, have continued to document it for the past almost 3 years. That's crazy. It's a long time.
I know. I think one of the things that's the most crazy to me is how many of us started doing it 3 years
Mhm.
ago. Because I think you're right. I think there wasn't that much of a community. You did more research than I did. I just literally was like I think I started on Instagram probably in February or March. And those videos are hilarious because I didn't have any kind of like clamp or phone holder. So I had this really big tall glass vase and I like set the
Yep.
I, like set the phone on this really tall glass vase and like tried to cut it so you couldn't really see it, but you can still kind of see it.
I mean, if I'm sure if you look at that first video, like I didn't have a setup. Like I didn't have my little claw thing that I use now. I'm pretty sure I had my phone and then I would like hit record and then try to stir a little bit and get like 5 seconds of footage and then stop, and actually work on what I was doing. Yeah, it was, oh my gosh, it was so rough. Like the more you know. I forget, again, someone must have commented and said, "Hey, I use this type of arm thing," or like someone that did art. I was like, "How do you film that?" And just asking questions and figuring it out. I
Yeah,
loved
I
it.
feel like I think I must have finally like gone to Amazon or something and Googled like upside down phone holder. Or I don't,
That checks
I
out.
have I have done a lot of that since my dice making journey, like trying to figure out what things are without knowing the name for them. So I would just like describe them into Amazon.
Shiny filament paper, Easter bag strings that change colors.
I actually think that's how I ended up with like the first couple bundles I bought of Mylar being just
Mhm.
like nail art.
Yep.
But it looked just like Mylar. So I was like, sure, that's it. And then now I actually through that company you use, I actually purchased
Mhm.
like my first actual proper like Angelina film. And I was like,
Yep.
oh, I don't have to just get nail art. And that was just like 4 months ago.
I forget who had shown me that resource. Again, that was like, and maybe I'm just bold, but that was me reaching out to a maker being like, "Hey, where do you get those shiny things?" I forget if it was Chasing Rainbows, maybe helped me out back in the day. It was either her or Cat. And they're like, "Oh, this is the place I always go to." And I was like, "This is a treasure trove." It seemed a little shady ordering from it, like getting like the PayPal receipts and things. And I think it's one lady that kind of runs everything, but yeah, really leaning on the community early on was, I think, what let me continue and not just give up after, doing a couple dice pours and getting a bunch of bubbles everywhere.
So I guess we kind of came to this like I guess inadvertently we came to this very naturally. So I was going to ask you what sort of strengths you think you got from going so public with your dice making journey from the very, very beginning. But I think you already kind of touched on it with saying how you like weren't afraid to like reach out to the community and maybe they weren't afraid to reach out to you.
Yeah, I guess one thing, I don't know if I would call it a strength, but maybe something that has been a benefit from going, from zero knowledge to where I am today is I've always had a very open door policy on my account with receiving feedback. So I know there are several makers out there that don't want to hear any type of feedback on the types of designs that they're making or the types of pouring that they're doing. And very early on, I said, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. Like, do you like this? Like, what do you think about this design? What would you do differently? How would you ink the colors?" Getting that feedback so I'm not just living in my own head, I think was really beneficial. And I creating that policy or that, environment for people to feel comfortable coming and commenting and leaving notes, knowing that they would be received, with open arms, I think was really cool. And I'll still get comments where people will say like, "Oh, I might have used black instead of silver," or "I think it would be really cool if you did this next time." And then, you can build off of that.
I definitely see how that's like shaped not only your community but also your dice making.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, do you think you have a favorite style of dice?
Ooh. Like that I've made or that I've seen other people make?
Let's say both.
Mm. Or other makers, and maybe it's just like right now what I'm really liking. Cosmic Chaos Dice. She's been doing all of those. liquid cores with the one shiny edge on the 20 with the matte all the way around, and they look so crisp. They're so good. I literally just ordered one of her pre-orders for her pink version of it, and she's been doing them in several colors and across all the different colors. It just looks so good. Yeah, she's like nailed the glitter and the matte um finish. I forget what she calls them. I don't know if it's like some type of like peekaboo. I feel like she has a name for the reveal of the portal. I don't think it's portal dice. She does have a name though for them.
I do think now that you described it, I think I've seen it. I definitely think I know what you're talking about, and they are absolutely stunning. Although I feel like a lot of what Cosmic Chaos Dice makes is amazing.
I think I have two sets from her, and one of them I roll like every game I play. It's like one of my go-to sets that like sits on my little dice tray, which I feel like is an accomplishment. I have a huge collection, and there's like it's her. Arsenic Dice has a set that they've made. I think I have two of their sets that are like those three. They're go-tos. And then my favorite design that I've ever done, I don't know. I did and do really like the Blood Moon design that I recently did. I feel like myself as a baby dice maker 3 years ago, if I would have seen a picture of that, I would have been like, "No way will ever get to be able to make that type of design." I'm trying to think of something that's maybe like I don't creative that I've, done. I feel like my coffee dice like pretty early on for like a really neat design.
I think in the early, maybe like the first year and a half or so that we were kind of all on TikTok,
Mhm.
I think when I thought of you in like an actual style to associate
Mhm.
with you, I actually thought, and I think the coffee dice would probably qualify as that style, but I thought about how you did do these really cool, like sort of layered pours that mix translucent and opaques.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, I feel like you did an awful lot of that. Like, I
Yep.
feel like your Hellfire set was kinda like that.
Mhm.
The coffee dice, I think, qualified, but I think there were quite a few, especially, like, in your Disney
Yeah.
collection, sort of, and so I always felt like you did that really, really well, sort of combining, like, the opaques and the translucents, and, like, they never I don't know, they just always, like, mixed and, like, super cool.
I kind of called them like, yeah, like the mixed media kind of where I
Yeah.
would have like I would always do like a pigment paste, some type of clear base with like an alcohol ink, and then like maybe like a glittery or mica powder as like the third or fourth. And then yeah, I literally just kind of like chaotically would be like, okay, here's gonna be, a layer of each one. And it kind of blooped and created some really cool windows.
For a long time, that was what I thought of when I thought of, like, your style, and I
Hmm.
actually started attempting making dice kind of like that
Hmm.
because I thought yours looked so cool.
Aw.
Although, since you mentioned it, I can't let it, like, float away. I feel like you were one of the only dice makers I know, if not the only dice maker I know, that is incredibly comfortable using pigment paste.
Oh, maybe. I feel like, yeah, there's me. Who else does? Kelsey with Royal Burrows dice. She uses, I think, pigment paste in almost all of her bases. I think she does. And then maybe Dice Cat. I think she was the one that like gave me the early advice on like, okay, you have to use like hardly anything. Like hardly any amounts of the pigment paste or, you're screwed and you'll get a soft cure. So, yeah, I always use a pigment paste. I hardly ever do just like a clear basic resin color. Like I'll never do just like an alcohol ink. I think the pigment paste adds a cool texture and, opacity or cloud to the dice design.
I think this year I need to, like, maybe find a different brand of pigment paste because I had the worst fail of my entire life using pigment paste. I think you know the set I'm talking about, where the dice
Maybe.
were just, like, leaking.
What pigment paste have you been using?
I think just Let's Resin.
Okay.
And I recently tried again after you gave me the advice, like, not to use hardly any,
Hmm.
and you couldn't see it.
Yeah.
It just didn't show up. So I don't know if I just need to, like, look at a different brand. I think I was looking at, like, eye candy or something, but I was like, "I don't know what to buy."
So I started off and I could not tell you. I got it at Michael's, maybe. It was that little white thing of pigment paste colorant like in their resin section, and I used that for probably the first year and a half, and I guess that's something I did a lot was I was custom mixing colors. So I would use that white pigment paste and then mix in alcohol inks to get whatever color I was going for. And then that just got to be pretty tedious. And a lot of my alcohol inks dried up. And then now I've been using just resin, which is definitely pricier, but you get a ton of it. So I feel like it's worth like the quantity that you get. And literally like a toothpick like tip amount, like
Yeah,
nothing.
that's how much I used the last time I tried to use it, and it just didn't show up. Like, you just couldn't see it. And I was like, "Okay, well," I went from, like, way too much to, like,
One extreme to another.
I know, and then I just gave up. I was like, "This is dumb."
With everything other than pigment paste, I have the too much gene. Where I'll use like way too much alcohol ink or I'll throw way too much mica and glitter. Pigment paste, I'm really good about just a little bit and then, mixing it until it's at the opacity I want. But maybe that's what I need to do a tutorial on is how to
Yeah,
use pigment paste.
you definitely should. And then I'll do a video following your tutorial and screw it up.
I'll just mail you the pigment paste. We use the same resin now.
We do use the same resin, although right now I don't have the same resin.
Oh, yeah.
Well, because it was out of stock, and so I got something else from the same company, and then I haven't cast anyway, so I'm like, I probably didn't even have to buy this. One last thing I really wanted to talk to
Yeah.
you about, and it's something that, again, I do think we have in common,
Mhm.
although, like, maybe in different ways, but I feel like, especially in the beginning, I feel like pop culture always really influenced your dice making.
Mhm.
And like I said, that's definitely something we have in common. I mean, some of my earliest sets were, inspired by things that I really loved. Although
Mhm.
mine, I think, was very, very, very nerdy stuff.
Yeah.
Like I, was doing like Critical Role dice when I was first getting
Mhm.
started, and I don't know. I literally can't think of a single other set of dice I made. I made a friend's set once, but it ended up just looking like blueberry lemonade.
That's cute.
But yeah, so I feel like pop culture really influenced your style from a very early period. I don't know if it was your first viral video series, maybe it was, but I know you made a lot of Pokemon dice.
Mhm.
And now, is that something that you're like, are you very into Pokemon?
The Pokemon dice were the first, like, videos that did well. I don't know if we look back at them number-wise, if I would say that they went viral, but they definitely helped, like it was probably my first, like, six-digit view, I probably got a couple 100,000 views on some of them. If
I don't
I
know why I thought you had one that hit a million.
early on, let's get out the TikTok and see.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know. I thought one of them had. I could be wrong. I mean, I know that they definitely did very, very well. And I think it did help, push your or kind of create your following at a time when, as we said, there weren't a lot of dice makers.
yeah. So I will scroll back and try to find it. And so it's funny because I always called it the like Pokemon series, but it really turned into like just Eevee dice. And I wouldn't say I'm not like a huge Pokemon connoisseur. Like I don't know everything. I played Pokemon Sapphire as a kid. I collected the cards. Like the guys on the block with me, we would make pictures of our own Pokemon like growing up. Like I mean, we played the games.
So I'm gonna stop you right there. I know Jigglypuff
Okay.
and Pikachu,
Yeah.
and there's a fish.
Magikarp,
Uh-huh.
maybe.
And I played Pokemon Go
Yeah.
for 14 seconds. So when you say, I wouldn't say I'm like a Pokemon connoisseur, and then you say all this Pokemon stuff that you did and have done and know, I'm like, I don't know what any of those words mean.
So I guess for me, being like a younger, like I'm a younger millennial. I'm like right on the edge of like zillennial borderline. So
Right. Whereas I am an old millennial,
you're an elder
elder,
millennial. No, so
old. I have a very big birthday coming up in 2 months, and I think I'm starting to stew in it because, yeah, I've worn makeup more this year than I probably did over like 3 months last year.
you're saying
I def
2024, like you have?
Correct.
And
Like,
we're
I've
on
worn
day
makeup
4?
yeah, I didn't wear makeup yesterday, and that was it. Other than that, I've worn makeup every day in 2024. And I feel like there were months where, like, I didn't wear makeup 3 times in 3 months. And now I've yeah, I just keep looking in the mirror and I feel like I look old.
No, you do not look old.
It's okay. We're going to Italy, so that'll take the sting out of turning 40. So you're a younger
So,
millennial.
being, I guess, my age, like, we grew up with Pokemon. Like, we had the Pokemon McDonald's toys. Like, that's when the, like, Game Boy and Game Boy DS or Game Boy Advances came out. Like, so we had those handheld consoles, and Pokemon was, like, probably one of the largest games or most popular games to get. Um, so I know very early generation Pokemon from like my childhood, but if you were to ask me about Pokemon from, years ago, I'd have no idea. So like I don't want to, being in a fandom, you could say you're a fan of it, but there's like that line where if someone knows a lot more than you, like it just gets into dicey territory. Say I'm a fan of something and then you get a lot of actuallys around you. So I'd like to say that I'm a casual watcher or knower because there are people that are extreme. I pulled up my analytics. My CMO would be happy. Marketing officer, he's like, he knows all about my account and he's like, "Oh, you've got these views and blah blah blah." I'm like, and I have like no idea because I just don't track it super well. But I pulled up my EV dice and it was incredibly early. So it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11, my 11th video was the Pokemon series. The first like the first Eevee series. And in that, the one that like popped off is like just under 400,000 views. Which like for you and me, I feel like we've hit some of those like higher numbers before. So I don't know if it was just like the time where since the communities it wasn't oversaturated with a lot of makers that really stood out. Um, but yeah, and then I feel like quickly after that is when I went into like Disney, where I felt a lot more comfortable talking about it because again, I grew up watching a ton of Disney videos. I knew that fandom very well, so I could do some Disney princesses or um the Disney villain series. I feel like is what really kind of really launched everything, which I feel like I've been like itching to like revisit and redo. That could be a lot of fun.
I don't know, what else do you wanna talk about? Is there anything else? I feel like
Um,
we covered most of the stuff.
yeah, I can't remember everything that you listed, but I feel like
I feel like we did.
we did talk about a lot of dice stuff. We talked about pop culture
We did. We
and
talked
how
about you putting your journey out on TikTok
yes,
right away.
that's still insane that I did that.
I actually just watched your first video the other day because I think you sent it to me.
Yeah, oh yeah, because you sent your first video to me,
Well, I made a
or
TikTok about it.
oh yes, yeah, and
Yeah,
it was like super nauseating.
it was
It
awful.
was like all the transitions and all like the
Yeah,
ins and outs and like,
yeah, it
ugh.
was so terrible. I don't know what I was doing. I thought I was being cool. I think that was still when I was recording in the app, and I was like, "What can I do in this?" I think it was good for everybody that I started editing off the app.
Yes. No, well, and I feel like I don't think my editing style has changed like too much. Like I used to really speed up certain clips, but I feel like I found a formula and I kind of just do it. No transitions or extra editing, all just little splices and
I think that's mostly where I am now. I definitely used to do my reveals too fast, so I've
mhm,
slowed those down for sure. And I don't use nearly as many transitions. Every now and then I might like between like maybe taking the lid off and like showing it because sometimes I like take my time and I feel like
mhm,
it. So sometimes I will do like a transition there.
mhm,
Or if I feel like me just like showing dice and the reveal gets boring, sometimes I will do like a crossfade or something. But for the most part, I don't do much.
mhm.
Either it's certainly nowhere near what I used to do. Like I don't know what the hell that was.
It was attention grabbing, that's for sure.
I know. I was really sad though that in the video I literally said, "What in the Michael Bay was that?" and nobody commented on that. I was like, man. I really wanted to piss off some Michael Bay fans.
Like, you said that in the recent video
In the
you made?
video,
Yeah,
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 so
yeah.
I posted the video and the reveal of
Yes.
my first
Yes.
set, because I wasn't gonna do it in 2 part. I was like, it's a redo, like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just gonna post the reveal and the pour, and at one point, because I watched it for the first time while I was recording the voiceover, and I literally said, "What in the Michael Bay was I doing?"
I think I remember you saying that, and I just, like, kind of
No
agreed. I'm like,
comment.
"Yeah, I mean, it checks out," like
Oh, that's so funny.
that makes me wanna post my first video again or repost some Glory Day stuff.
You should. I wanted to start doing Throwback Thursday and doing it every Thursday and showing, like, both the pour and the reveal,
Oh.
not making people, like, wait for part 2s on stuff I've already posted. And I do wanna do that. I wanna get it into my sort of, like, social media strategy for the year. I don't have one ready for today. It is Thursday, but what I might do, I recently cut together, it's like a 15-second video,
Mhm.
but I found pictures of my first ever dice set,
Yes.
and they're so bad.
Yeah.
And I did, like, one of those. I cut together, like, a 15-second, like, how it started, how it's going.
Mhm.
So maybe I'll just post that today, because that's still kind of a throwback, and it's the only thing I have ready in my drafts, and I don't feel like doing any more work tonight.
Well, maybe you can do that little throwback thing today, and maybe it'll go secretly viral for no reason, you know? I might, if you're
Um,
okay with it, I might do a throwback Thursday. That could be fun. Maybe we can
do it.
all
Yeah, I actually wanna start making it part of my content schedule. I wanna do it every Thursday, because I think it's super fun, and I like going back and revisiting, and I think eventually, like, when I actually start pouring again, I actually might even try to remake some of them as part of that.
Oh, yeah, that'd
Like,
be
I won't
fun.
do it every week, but maybe, like, once a month on Throwback Thursday, I'll try to remake one of my early sets.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I feel like that would help reinvigorate the community. I feel like we just haven't been doing anything fun together. You know, we used to do like so many different little challenges and posts, and I think we're all just in a weird little funk right now. So,
And it's funny because when I did my, like, YouTube chat with Katie
mhm,
last week, it was just supposed to be for YouTube, and we both had such a blast that I was
yeah.
instantly like, "This needs to be a podcast," but in the back of my mind, I was thinking that. I was like, "I don't think we have anything like this."
Hmm.
Like, even the dice makers I follow on YouTube and stuff, I don't think any of it is, like, just dice makers, like, getting together and chatting.
Hmm.
And, my sort of, I wanna say long-term goal, but really it's a short-term goal for this podcast, is to actually get a panel of dice makers together and actually create a round table and,
Hmm.
like, talk about stuff. So, I wanted to do some one-on-one stuff first as a way to, like, introduce the people so that they
Yeah.
kind of knew who was at the round table.
Oh, yeah.
So then, like, I do an episode, let's just say, for example, so I had, Katie on for my first week, and now you, and then we're going to be doing Andrew. So, for example, let's say after that, I could, in theory, get you, Katie, and Andrew all together, and we all talk about, like, sanding, and we
Yeah.
all talk about, like, our different approach to sanding and how we do and what we do and what works for us and what doesn't work for us, and, like, maybe where we started, and
Hmm.
I don't know, like, just throw out a topic.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
um and we talk, so that's kind of like my goal with this, but I want to get lots of makers involved because I don't ever want there to be pressure for somebody to be like, "Oh, I can't make it that week." I would
Hmm.
love to be able to be like, "Okay, well, we'll just use somebody else." Like, like, no big deal, no pressure. I just
Yeah.
want it to be fun. Kat, thank you so much for joining me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was great being here.
Before you go, please, can you let everybody know where we can find you on the internet?
Yes, so you can find me under the handle Cultured Swine Dice on TikTok. That is where I primarily post. I do also have an Instagram that sometimes sees some content, and I have a Discord channel as well that's pretty hoppin' for the most part. It's a great little side community that I have over there. So those three spaces.
Awesome. Are you still on YouTube?
I was just about to say, I think I have a YouTube too. I am not really active there too. I think I have like 2 videos up there, which I like. I just haven't had time to post more on. But yes, you could follow me. I think I might even have what was the spinoff from Instagram that
Threads.
I have a threads under this. It's all anywhere. Just search cultured swine dice and I will most likely be there in some capacity.
Perfect. And I will put a lot of that information in the description of this podcast slash YouTube video as well. So if anybody wants that information, they can get it. Thank you again for joining me. This was a lot of fun. I look forward to having you back on the roundtable.
Yep, can't wait to come back.
All right, I'll see you soon.
Yep, we'll see ya.